Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. The information here is strictly for educational purposes only and is not a recommendation to trade. You are solely responsible for your own trading actions. No members of DSC Capital were harmed in the making of this video.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lord Sean Connery here with Mohammed, and this is Noilstradamus. Going to go on over the weekly outlook on crude oil, where we think it's going to go during this holiday of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this holiday week should be, well, hopefully we can see some volatility. Obviously, it's Thursday and Friday where it's going to be shortened sessions, but we'll see what the market has in store for us. And to start, let me just start by talking about the failure to break out of this balance to the upside. So we had this 3-day balance over here where the TPO value remained lower. On Tuesday, the market did attempt to break out higher. However, it only shifted the volume point of control and TPO point of control remained lower. Now, on Wednesday, in the Wednesday overnight session, what did end up happening is the market, let me just open this, the market just fell right through all that volume, right through all that two-way like a breeze. You can just see how pretty much it was just singles. It was like a single bracket which just fell right through that structure. Now, that information is very telling because pretty much if this was going to break out to the upside, you buyers would want to see all this volume hold. They're looking at this as structure, they're looking at this as support. And the fact that it just gave up so easily, that's information. And obviously what it did next is it just went to the opposite edge of the balance. So something that I'm like one of my scenarios, and this is also based that we do have end of month on Friday. Now, like we said earlier, it is a holiday weekend or a holiday week, but just kind of having that idea in mind, the failure to break out of balance and the move in the opposite direction and the end of month, one of my scenarios that I'll be watching for is for the market to either attempt to move higher. This could come back into this sort of lower distribution right over here, so right around this area. Or if it really wants to push higher, this is the weekly point of control, this reference point over there, where the market would attempt higher, we would fail, and we would just see the continuation lower. And this is pretty much playing for the continued break to the downside from this balance. So it's like just a balance, a very simple balance continuation trade. And then targets for this trade, one key spot, which is really nice, is if we just zoom out, we have this sort of 3-day balance period over here where value did overlap. So this would be a pretty decent area for the market to gravitate towards. Simply checking upper value, rejecting, finding sellers, and then continuing lower down to this is around what the 50, we're going to say the 5680s. That's a pretty
Yeah.
decent reference point for the short. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Rob?
Yeah, like the fact that we we had that 2-day balance going into a 3-day balance, it broke on out, and there's some really strong, very large delta. I mean, it looked like this thing was going to start sailing to the upside, and when it did that on Tuesday, uh, it failed to make a new high for the week, which is very telling because all we've been seeing is like lower weekly highs, lower weekly lows. And you'd expect, okay, 2-day balance breakout, we pull back and we continue, but there really wasn't anything um, newsy or anything data driven that wanted us to go that. And then when it fell on through, I remember there was some news. I think there was like a Goldman Sachs piece that they saw oil was going to have like a higher supply, lower demand. Like in 2026, the prices are going to be at $56 a barrel. There was some other OPEC stuff that showed dwindling demand and higher supply, and I think that's what the catalyst was to drop it back through. And if you break out of a balance area and then you come right back in and you don't find those buyers, all those people are just saying, "Oh shit, we're fucked." And I mean that ran through pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, very telling. And it's funny because I think all three of our scenarios played out in the weirdest way possible. Your buy scenario played out to head to the higher side. The sell scenario played out, even though I don't see how, forming a 2 day up to a 3 day balance in breaking out to short that would have been like the hero short, because maybe you had insider information, Nancy Pelosi trading service.com, she's running that site. And then also it literally looked like on Thursday it was going to come back and play the tertiary, where we would test lower, test higher, and then come back in the balance. And then I think on Thursday all the markets just dropped. All the markets lost their assholes, and I think oil just got drug along with it. There might have been some peace talks with the Ukraine and Russia to catalyze that as well. But I mean, when the ES and the NQ and the RTY have no bids and they drop 200 points in a session, you can't help but to think that no matter who's buying oil, eventually someone's going to get fucked. And, maybe we're going to see some like margin calls and just liquidations of positions across the board. So it was, that was really interesting to see. Um, I like your scenario one where we attempt to go higher, because we do have the end of the month and it's on a Friday, Thursday and Friday, which is Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. So, hey, who knows? Maybe oil buyers are going to have a nice Black Friday sale. They'll be able to catch oil on a discount because the commercials are going to go ahead and let go of their shit. If we do going up to, that first distribution fail to, get higher, or if we go even up to that weekly VPOC up at the 5990s, yeah, we should find a renewed seller interest where prices look attractive. And, if we're just going to keep chugging along, lower weekly highs, lower weekly lows, I like the low target where the 5680s are, along that 3 day balance where we kind of held around, I think almost 56, around 56 at the lows to
Yeah.
to actually, spring back higher. That's when we had the not the EIA, but we had the the SPR, buying up oil, and we had some news there. So that really sent the market from, 58 all the way up to 60 something. That was nuts. So yeah, I do like that primary scenario. I think that's very much in line with what's been going on. And then the alternate scenario is kind of the reverse. It's more of, instead of checking higher, which, would be the nice thing to happen, especially if it gets in line with the end of month selling, that could happen or could not. The fact that on a secondary scenario, we actually come in and come down and check that 3 day balance below us at the 5680s and maybe find some renewed interest. Who knows? Maybe we'll get another report that the SPR is going to refill another million barrels of oil. And then from there, we actually head higher. And how high? Who knows? But I don't see a new weekly high. I see this, again, there's going to be our lower low for the week, and then eventually we're going to have a lower high for the week. It's just, where are we going to stop? Are we going to stop at, around those 58 80s, or are we going to gravitate all the way back to the 5990, where that very large MC point of control is? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be
Like,
very interesting. And going up, through the end of the week, that kind of fights the tide of the whole concept of, the end of the week. So there has to be something, in my opinion, that's actually going to, drive and hold that, despite, seller presence. So
scenario. And I think if the market does test the lower into this 3 day balance and we do hold, I think I feel like it would be more of a short-term bounce, maybe checking back up here for a possible a short, which at that point it may either just balance out and start to accept down here, or it may just continue lower. So I do like that secondary scenario you have.
yeah,
And it's crazy too, because I remember last week something that we talked about in the video is, you know, keep shorting these lower, like the short is going to keep working until something changes.
Yeah, until it
And it's
doesn't.
like, yeah, and it's like every time we push higher, it's another lower high. Push higher, lower high, push higher, lower high. So it's, it's been trading pretty well if you're on the short and you're just literally leaning against those swing highs.
Yeah. Oh, Tuesday short. I mean, come on. A break of 2 to 3 day balance. I mean, you have to have some pretty big fucking balls for that. But the guys at DSC Capital were all over that. They're just smashing their keyboards like, "Hey, boss tells us to short. We're gonna short." So yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Just flip a fucking coin, like lower high, lower low, like easy
Yeah,
peasy, lemon squeezy. If it were only that easy, but it never is.
pretty much. Yeah, I agree with that. Uh, I'm not sure I have too much else to cover. I mean, this is like a TPO composite, so kind of backing on the short, like where the two spots would be. It would either be so around this distribution, it could be around the TPO point of control, or it could be around the volume point of control, which is pretty much the prior
Yeah.
weekly point of control. But that's all I have to, that's pretty much all my scenarios. I'm not sure if you have anything else, or we should just wrap up. There was a little bit of technical issues with the ending of this video, but that's pretty much all we had to cover. If you guys did enjoy, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and enjoy the week, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.